Hello everybody, and welcome to the first audio PowerPoint, I guess. Hopefully this will work and hopefully everybody can follow along kind of as I walk through the PowerPoint instead of me standing up in class, but hopefully we'll kind of work through it and go through the PowerPoints and shoot me an email or give me a call if you have any questions. I'll definitely be available, and I'll be checking my email probably every couple of days. So if you have any questions, let me know and just keep in contact, but hopefully we can kind of work through things as we go. So we're going to start with the chapter 12, genetics, okay, and hopefully you've read the chapter by now. If you haven't, you can get your book out and kind of follow along in your book as well as through this PowerPoint, okay. So genetics started in 1856 with a guy by the name of Gregor Mendel, and he was studying garden peas, okay? He was looking at these 7 different characteristics: seed shape, seed color, flower color, pod shape, pod color, and on, okay? He presented his work, but he was disregarded for more than 3 decades. However, he was eventually named the founder of modern genetics, okay? So kind of the idea behind that is if you believe in something, keep going and keep pursuing it if you truly believe in it, because you might be right. But Gregor Mendel with his pea plants is kind of credited for the beginning of modern genetics. Okay, so we're going to kind of go through genetics briefly. Hopefully this will kind of spark your memory back from some of your basic biology classes. But mitosis, the first thing that we'll talk about, mitosis is when there's somatic cells or body cells, okay, and essentially that includes all other cells in the body other than the reproductive cells, the ova and the sperm, which we talked about in our reproductive section, okay. The parent somatic cell replicates and divides into 2 identical daughter cells, okay, and within those daughter cells are chromosomes, okay. And humans have 23 pairs of chromosomes, okay, so this would be 23 pairs, or a total of 46, okay, 23 pairs is equal to 46 individual chromosomes, okay. So you might say, well, what are chromosomes, okay? Chromosomes are rod-like bodies in the nucleus that contain the genetic code, okay. So that's what tells your body what to do and how to do it, why you have blue eyes, why you have brown hair, and on, okay, why you're 5 foot tall or why you're 6 foot tall, okay. And so mitosis, the beginning and ending, is that beginning there's one parent cell, and at the end there's 2 identical daughter cells, okay. So if we look at this picture from your book, it's kind of a visual representation of how it works, okay. Now remember, these are all other cells in the body other than your reproductive cells, okay. So you have one, what's called mother cell or parent cell. You have your chromosomes in there, they split and divide, and then you end up with 2 identical daughter cells, okay? So that's kind of mitosis in a nutshell, okay? The other thing that we have in our body is meiosis, okay? And even though it's less cells in the body, it has its own pathway, and it's maybe a little bit more complex, okay? So again, mitosis is having to do with all your other body cells. Meiosis has to do with the sperm and the ova, okay? Sometimes it's called that spermatogenesis, which is obviously the making of new sperm, or oogenesis, which is making of new eggs or ova, okay? And what that second bullet point means is that the gametes, or the product of meiosis, or the end result, contains half the genetic material of the parent cell, okay? And that's called haploid, okay? And that's because obviously when you have a sperm and an egg that come together, it has the full genetic material, which begins that new baby organism, whatever, okay? So everything between these 2, spermatogenesis and oogenesis, is the same, okay, for the first 2 steps, primordial germ cell and primordial oocyte, okay? But then from there, the process differs, okay? From spermatogenesis, it divides from a primary into 2 secondary, okay? And then it divides again into 4 spermatids containing half the genetic material. Again, that's called haploid, Okay. The spermatids then develop a tail and lose their cytoplasm to develop into functional sperm. Okay, so before they're fully developed and mature, they're called spermatids. Okay, so the main idea here is that the beginning is one primordial germ cell with full genetic material, and it ends with 4 functional sperm cells with half the genetic material. Okay, so again, if we look at the picture from your book, okay, we start with one primordial germ cell. Okay, it divides again, you end up with 4 spermatids. Okay, this is the final step, and then you have functional sperm. Okay. In oogenesis, okay, the first 2 steps are the same. Okay, so from the primary oocyte, okay, then it becomes a secondary oocyte and first polar body. Okay, this is a little bit different. From there, then the secondary oocyte turns into the egg or the ovum and a second polar body. Okay, now the second polar or all polar bodies will die and be reabsorbed by the body. Okay, like it says right there. So again, just in the text form, beginning is the primary germ cell, full genetic material, just like sperm, whereas the end is one viable ovum with half the genetic material and 3 non-functional polar bodies. Okay, so let's look at this picture again. We have our primary germ cell, which replicates the genetic material and divides. Okay, so you have your first polar body and your secondary oocyte. Okay, this is still not a functional ovum. Then it doesn't replicate, but it divides again to get half the genetic material, and you have 1, 2, 3 polar bodies and 1 functional egg or ovum. Okay, so why is that? Why does sperm become 4 functional sperm and eggs don't become 4 functional eggs? Okay, the whole idea behind this is because it needs more nutrition. We talked about in our reproductive section how it takes 3 to 5 days for that fertilized embryo to get to the uterus to implant and start getting nutrients from the mother. Well, the idea is that the egg is much larger because there's way more nutrition packed into this egg. Okay, and that nutrition and that additional energy is going to be what powers it and what keeps it growing and replicating for those 3 to 5 days in transport to the implantation site. Okay, so these polar bodies are formed because they're obviously much smaller, okay, that end up being reabsorbed. But what it's doing is it's redirecting all of that extra nutrition into this larger cell so that it can sustain life if it's fertilized for more time. Okay? Does that make sense, hopefully? Let me know if you have any questions, okay? Okay, so fertilization, okay? So back to reproduction, we talked about how the egg and the sperm come together if everything's right, okay? The sperm penetrates the egg's outer layer, I guess, and they come together and the 2 haploid, okay, become 1 diploid, okay? Whereas diploid meaning that they have the full genetic material, okay? That's diploid, remember? The other thing to remember is that fertilization is random, okay? So that's talking about how and why each and every one of us are different, or every one of the animals are different. They might have the same coat color, but they're going to be all different, obviously, okay? Gametes have a random half set of genetic material from the parent, okay? A random sperm fertilizes the random egg that was ovulated, and so therefore you have genetic diversity. Okay? All right. So kind of on to some more kind of background type stuff. So that goes over mitosis and meiosis. And I will have a couple of YouTube videos loaded up underneath of the genetics section. Make sure and watch those YouTube videos because they do a great job of kind of showing the difference between meiosis and mitosis in kind of a visual video sense. Okay? So if we continue on into DNA and RNA, okay, chromosomes, the chromosomes that we've been talking about are made up of DNA, okay? And DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid, okay? And you'll want to get that spelling from your text, okay? So get a textbook and fill that in, okay? But DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid, okay? And DNA is comprised of 2 strands of nucleotides wrapped around each other in a double helix structure, okay? Just like this picture here on the side. It has 3 main components: a sugar, a phosphate, and one of the 4 nitrogenous bases, okay? And you can see those bases are A, T, G, and C, okay? If you get into more advanced or upper level classes, there's actually a U also, but for our purposes, we'll just consider it 4 nitrogenous bases, okay? These 3 things together, okay, make up what's called a nucleotide, okay? So a nucleotide is this fill in the blank here, okay? Many nucleotides chemically bonded together are called a polymer, okay? So that kind of fills in those blanks. So the nitrogenous bases, these are what hold the key to inheritance, okay? The pattern and the pairing and the order of these are what actually determine, like I was saying, your hair color, your eye color, your height, your, all those kinds of things, okay? So the 4 main ones are going to be the adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine, A, T, G, and C, okay? And this will be a question on one of your quizzes, okay? Remember that, A is always going to pair with T, okay? So these 2 are a pair, and these 2 are a pair. G is always going to pair with C, okay? So read the code, okay, is the title of this slide, okay? To synthesize protein, okay, the whole point of your body and your life, I guess, is to synthesize protein, okay? Before you're 25 or so, your body is growing, you're building tissue to grow and get stronger and strengthen your bones, all that kind of good stuff. And then maybe you will raise a family, and so then you're trying to, maybe build a baby, get pregnant, you're out in the working field and you're trying to build more tissue. So the whole idea is to obviously build tissue and build protein, okay? So that's where transcription and translation come into play, okay? And RNA, or ribonucleic acid, is what's responsible for this transcription and translation of protein, okay? So you have 3 different types of RNA: tRNA, mRNA, and rRNA, okay? So we'll kind of breeze through this relatively quickly, okay? Protein synthesis starts with 1, transcription, okay? Transcription is when mRNA, okay, or the messenger RNA, copies the genetic code of DNA, okay? mRNA is real similar to DNA because it's essentially trying to just copy what the DNA has to say, okay? The DNA never leaves the cell. It's the RNA's job to kind of transmit that message out. Single-stranded, gets the message from DNA or leaves the nucleus and travels to the ribosome where that actually happens, okay? Step 2 and 3. Step 2, union of the amino acid with the tRNA, okay? So each tRNA unites with the amino acid that it needs, okay? And then the last step is matchup of mRNA with tRNA, okay? And it continues down the length until all the codons are in order, okay? Or until that protein is made up, okay? You can read the rest of this. Again, like I said, there's a YouTube video that I'm going to link that goes through this. So this might be kind of wordy and confusing, but please maybe stop at this point. And I'm going to stop this audio right now so that you can watch that video. And then I'll pick up in the PowerPoint with another audio session. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. Watch your couple of YouTube videos, and then we'll pick up where we're leaving off in the next video.